So this week I'm once again back at Top Car. This time we're looking at the XC90. This was a 2.4 litre D5 with the 6-speed auto transmission, kicking out around about 170 brake. The XC90's had a long run. Started in 2002 and this model went all the way through to 2014 with minor styling upgrades and a little bit of extra power squeezed out of the engine over time. This one here's a 2012. You could tell Volvo tried to modernise it in a few places. You'll notice the daytime running lights at the bottom there. But Volvos have always been very renowned for being quite old-fashioned and very tank-like, and this doesn't disappoint in either of those areas. They've got a nice set of wheels going on. There's a decent gap in the arch, I guess. The front and back styling isn't too bad, what they've done here. But overall, compared to some of its competitors, say the Range Rover and various others, it just doesn't have that styling edge. They're still renowned as status symbols, though. Let me just point this out for everybody. This key is absolutely enormous. It's just, well, I mean, it's reassuringly chunky, don't get me wrong. It's also reassuringly heavy. It's flick up like Volkswagen, and the buttons are very clearly legible, but wow. I mean, holy hell, Volvo, this thing's huge. The general trend of the interior seems to be subtle durability. You can see here all the finishes are nice leather white clean finish. The door cards themselves are well spaced and a little bit of chrome just to lighten it up. And we notice the same carries forward to the front door cards, and that's perfectly spaced for my size of beverage. The seats themselves, very interesting. The electric controls with the memory built in. Well, I think that's pretty smart. Leather seats themselves, as I mentioned earlier, are very comfortable, but they're a lot thinner than you'd expect, especially around the headrest area. The dash itself is very plain, but it does what it's supposed to, and I think that's really signature Volvo, if you ask me. Here's something nice to see. The passenger side gets electrics too. The clocks are simple, legible, and they match the rest of the style of the interior. The little screen display on the bottom left is quite good too. Controls are simple and easy to understand, and you'll notice there's a parking brake lever here, because if we go down there, there's actually a pedal on the floor. And you notice the pedals are well spaced. I often talk about this because I've been to some cars and it's really not the case. And take a look at this. It's like a fluffy bath mat in here. These floor mats are pretty awesome. As I said earlier, the dash layout is a little bit on the simplistic and plain side. I think perhaps they could have coloured this, maybe even like a chrome finish or even polished aluminium would have been nice. But it's all just very grey and soulless, which is a real shame. Also, the screen on top of the dash, if we give it a minute, up it comes. But the only problem I have with this screen here is the fact that it does navigation only. Everything else is controlled down here. It feels like it's just been shamelessly bolted on. It doesn't feel like it's integrated at all. Now, you could look at that as a positive if you were going to put in an aftermarket system. But generally speaking, if you were paying this amount of money for something of this premium quality, surely you wouldn't need to. Yes, I didn't mention, the Nav Unit cannot be controlled from here. You have to use this controller. Now, what happens when somebody loses this or it runs out of battery? Well, your Nav's going to have problems then. It's going to be practically useless. And I think that's a bit of a shame. Like I said, it's not really integrated all that well. This annoyed me, and not just a little bit. Your standard park to drive works just fine. But your semi-auto mode, you push it away from you, not towards you. I find that very aggravating. And see the other thing? That little cubbyhole behind you where the cup holders are, it gets in the way. While we're on the subject of annoying things, the seatbelt warning light's up here where the mirror is. But at least the dome lights are reasonable. Nissan could learn a lot from this car as well. I guess the glove box is a decent size, not that that matters too much for most people. And there is a USB interface in here, which is nice to see on stock stereos from the era. Into the back here. Again, the seats are beautifully finished. They didn't scrimp back here, except on one thing. There's no armrest, and I certainly think there should be. But here, look. Brushed aluminium. Now, why couldn't they have done that on the front section of the dashboard around the stereo? That would have made it. It wouldn't have looked so plain if they'd have done that. Transmission tunnel is no problem for somebody sitting in the middle. It's actually a really good size. And that's quite respectful considering this thing's a four-wheel drive. So it just shows it can be done. The pockets on the back of the seats are a bit small. You can't hardly fit anything in them, which is a shame. And for a big car, I'd expected more legroom than this. That's rather disappointing. Okay, this is quite good. You may not get an armrest, but the middle seat splits from the other two, letting you have it up separately. They could have put a couple of cup holders in the back of it, or at least made some kind of use of it, which I think is a shame. So let's take a look at the back. There's no power tailgate on this one. You get a top section that opens, and you get a bottom section that opens, which doesn't really feel all that useful. It's a little small, and it just feels like it was added there for flair and style, but it's not really working too well. Now what's interesting is, you'll notice I've got this big rubber cover on it, and when you lift it, there's actually seats under there. This is a 7-seat model. Allow more space for getting in and out of the back row. The seats move on runners here, but again I feel like everything's been sort of crammed in here. It could really do with more space to work properly. The seating system in here is overly complicated, that's one thing I'll say for it. For this back row anyway. So the seat comes up out of the floor, well, jeez, this is an utter nightmare, by the way. The headrest then gets caught on there, which is annoying. So you raise your seat up section like this, and then it gives you your back section. The headrest comes up like this, and sometimes it stays and sometimes it doesn't. And then the bottom section pulls out on a tag, like so. And it should click in place. Now, that's a nightmare in itself. Now to get it to go back, you got a plastic lever on this side, you pull that, and that releases this bottom section. Tuck that back in until it clicks, then this comes down. Now it took me ages to figure out that the headrest should automatically fold down when you get to a certain distance. I spent ages looking for a pull tag on it, because the two front ones have pull tags to drop the headrests. Consistency, Volvo, consistency. Interestingly, you get this lovely little pocket in here. I can see that getting broken. And the side one over here, there, again, a good size, but again, I can see it getting broken very easily. I think Volvo look at their cars the same way they look at stereo equipment. Reassuringly heavy is the best way to go. That key was enormous, I wasn't kidding. The amount of steering input you have to put in, it's quite heavy. The braking, the way the accelerator feels, it all seems to be designed with that reassuring heaviness in mind. Even the way it drives, it feels like a giant brick. However, don't let that fool you. That turbo diesel, it might be loud. That car definitely could use a bit more soundproofing. But it's certainly got a reasonable amount of power under the foot when you get out on the road. It's certainly capable. Alright, you're not going to win any drag contests, but I've said that about so many other cars this size. It still moves respectably. When it comes to suspension, that's pretty sturdy too. You don't feel a lot of the potholes or anything. However, it's not really as refined as I would have liked. So I look at this XC90 and I feel like it embodies middle-class conservatism. It's the sort of thing that people who are doing reasonably well but don't like to shout to the houses about it tend to buy. According to some of the forum posts I've been reading, they're about the only ones that can afford to repair them too. The things don't tend to go wrong that often with these, but when they do, they tend to be expensive. When I was younger, I always used to have a love for the late 80s, early 90s Volvos. For quite a few reasons. One, because you could get them really cheap. They were really durable, quite bulky, you could store a lot of stuff in them, and they would take a hell of a punishment. My 740 I didn't treat it particularly well, and it survived better than most. For my brief time with this XC90, I got the feeling that not much has changed with Volvo. They're still that bulky, durable workhorse that'll take a punishment today, and that's no bad thing. Don't forget to like and subscribe for some more content I've got upcoming, and if you hit the bell notification, hopefully you'll be told when I have some new ones coming out. The Honda Odyssey Mark III video I did recently, I really enjoyed making. I apologize to everyone about that. The Premiere backfired on me. I couldn't figure out how to get into it properly, so it kind of knackered me up. I'm going to try again upcoming soon. But anyway, till next time, look after yourselves.